It's also really damn tricky, dude. Like, I lost my ass on hiring a salesperson, like, right in the COVID times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, he came in, guns blazing, I'm badass, I know what the hell I'm doing. And, 35 grand in base salary later, he didn't bring in a single deal.
Oh, wow.
So, like, there's risk in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because you get a loan and you can pay somebody doesn't mean they're going to bring in money.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to Business Blindspots podcast, where we talk to founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and business leaders about their journey to build their business, build their brand. And we like to learn about problems they face, challenges they've overcome, and how they do business based on that moving forward. Today's guest is Christ Botvidson. He's a founder of Fuel and Spark Media. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know you have an interesting story, and I hope that we get to learn some really cool stuff from you.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's been a journey for sure. Yeah.
It's good to have a fellow salt and pepper man on the show too.
Yeah, it started coming in a while back. Yeah.
Why don't you just start by telling us how you grew up, where'd you go to school, and how you became a founder?
All right. Yeah. So I grew up here in the suburbs of Fort Worth, Texas. So lived in Hurston, Keller, and went to Keller High School. Went to college at Texas State University and got a degree in communication design. And that's where I guess I kind of got my entrance into the creative field. So communication design is basically a degree in graphic arts and advertising. And so graduated from there, bounced around the entry level positions and got some jobs here and there, and was freelancing at some different agencies and things like that. And I freelanced at a small design firm where I was able to actually learn a lot more about the business as a whole versus just the creative part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad has been an entrepreneur my whole life, and so I guess I just for some reason felt like I could do it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. Once I left that position and I was freelancing with some of the bigger agencies, I learned a lot there as well. But I just, started slowly building up my client list. Then I got a part-time job and at the same time was building up my clients. And finally got to a point to where I was able to pull the plug and do my own thing full time, and jumped in head first, was naive and broke and didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Wait, you were broke as a young entrepreneur?
Oh,
shocker.
Yeah.
Recurring theme here.
Yeah, recurring theme, right? And so I was just kind of started hustling and knocking out work and building a name for myself. Got a little office over off West 7th Street in Fort Worth and started building up a good network there, and started getting some clients that were paying the bills and paying rent and doing those things. And then I brought on a business partner, I think in 2013 or something like that. And that partnership lasted about 5 years, and it actually was extremely valuable, to help get us really established in Fort Worth in our own backyard here. My business partner Chuck and I parted ways, but it was amicable, and we're buddies, and we'll still have an old fashioned or a couple beers here and there. And so I would say that, things were going pretty well, but we were getting to a point to where we were just, while the top line revenue was growing, our profit margins weren't really growing. And we were grinding our asses off, and we're making a paycheck, but it wasn't like we weren't doing what we wanted.
No private jet money.
No private jet money. Still no private jet money. Maybe one day. But yeah, it's just kind of, we started growing, and we were saying yes to everyone, and started just kind of expanding our services to a point to where it just became a lot to manage. After Chuck and I parted ways in 2018, after a couple of years, like managing the whole thing on my own. I think that's one of the things too about a business partnership, or like any relationship, is like, you don't really know like what the other person was really like, how valuable they were, or it's like, you don't miss it until you don't have it.
Yeah.
And so when I was responsible for operations and getting shit out the door and managing our team and sales and networking and all that, it became a lot. But then, after a couple of years of doing that, we decided that we were going to regroup and rebrand our company and really like scale down our service offerings. Like, we changed the name of the company and everything because we were just tired of the grind, and it wasn't really that lucrative. And so that decision was made to form a company to focus on content creation, video production, animation, and social media marketing and advertising campaigns. We were doing some of that stuff, and that was the stuff that we enjoyed the most, that we're getting the best results for our clients. So we decided to we kind of like burn the ships, so to speak. I
love it.
Yeah, we burned the ships and started over. And it just so happened that the timing of that was pretty shitty, because we did that, and the decision was made to do that in late 2019, and we launched the new company in March of 2020.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
So we grinded and got through COVID, and got, luckily, the PPP money and some of those things like helped get us through. We survived, and now we're in a position to where we're ready to really take this thing to the next level.
That's a lot to unpack.
Sorry, I went a lot of questions. You asked me for my whole life story, so
what's your
I gave it to
and social.
Yeah,
I have a ton of questions. Okay, so you're freelancing, so essentially 1099. So what was that thought process outside of like, hey, I saw my dad be successful, I know I can be successful as an entrepreneur? Did you do a lot of planning? Was there a lot of preparation, or was it just go for it once your book was big enough, your client book?
I mean, I think part of it was naivety and stupidity, and like saying, I can.
I didn't agree with you, so because I think you're naive and stupid.
Yeah, it's like,
that's entrepreneur traits.
Yeah,
some
right.
point. I mean, it has to be.
Well, when I think I was, oh gosh, yeah, like 26 or 27 at the time, or something like
You're
that.
Kid.
And I was like, man, if this guy can do it, I can fucking do this. Like, how hard can it be? And then, get into business. And then I was like, oh, I got to meet with an accountant, and I got to set up a S Corp. What is that? And I'm paying rent on an office space. And then like, I start getting like things from Texas Workforce Commission and like all these taxes and all these things. And I'm like, dude, I realized like pretty quickly, like, I did not know what I was getting myself into. Like, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of volunteer for an organization that helps like startups and entrepreneurs get started, because I had no idea what I didn't know.
Did you have a mentor outside of your father?
Not really. I just thought I knew what I was doing, and I thought I could do it. And so it was just straight up hustle mode. Like, I was not charging enough, like
classic,
all that, same stuff. But, over time, I have done some amazing programs that have helped me become a more well-rounded entrepreneur. joined the EO Accelerator program, and then recently did the Goldman Sachs 10K Small Business program. And some of these things have like really, like sharpened my knife, so to speak, as far as my skill set goes running a business. But in the beginning, man, you don't know what you don't know, and it's tough.
So would you say you made a misstep every single day as a young founder?
No,
that was a joke. I'm
yeah,
just teasing.
I wouldn't say a misstep every single day, but I would say that I wish that I had reached out and gotten a mentor or been aware of some more of the resources that were out there. But we were able to make it, and I've been surviving on my own since 2008 pretty much. And so I haven't had an actual job since then.
So you mentioned getting a business partner. So what was that process like for you? How did you decide on who to go into business with?
I was getting burned out because I was doing everything myself. And I was basically like, if I want to build a business, I need help. Like I need somebody right there alongside me who's willing to hustle with me, and I kind of made that decision of like, I either need to find somebody and get help, or I need to just relegate myself to just being a freelancer, and like not worry about building an actual like company. Because I was just burned out. And one of my clients at the time, actually, we hit it off. We established a great working relationship. I helped him rebrand his company. He was a chief operations officer and head of marketing at the company he was working for. Helped them rename their company, develop logos and branding and web and all that kind of stuff. And through that process, we got really tight, and he was kind of getting tired of the industry that he was in. And I said, look, man, I'd love for you to come on board as a 50-50 partner, and like, let's just try to blow this thing up. And he came on board, and honestly, like, for all of the differences that we had, that was probably one of the best moves I actually ever made, was like bringing him on, because after a month or two of like us getting acclimated with each other, then he just went out and started like hustling business and like bringing it in, and I was able to then like make it all happen and execute, and it worked really well.
So you guys established your own roles within the business pretty quickly?
Yeah, pretty quickly. I think it took a little while, and Chuck at the time, he didn't consider himself like a salesperson, because he was like in this operations role. I'm like, dude, you are a natural born salesperson. Get out there. I was like, I don't even give a shit like if you step foot in the office, like at all. Just like, we need work coming in. And he took that to heart, man, and he ran with it, and it was awesome.
Outside salespeople should never be in the office more than one day a week.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy.
Yeah.
But okay, so you mentioned you brought him on, and then you started doing a bunch of different product offerings. So can you elaborate on that? What were you doing when he came on, and what were the new product offerings?
We didn't really increase our product offerings till a couple of years later, but at the time we were doing a lot of graphic design work. Web design was a big part of what we were doing, and it was a weird time in that kind of game, because it was this whole responsive design thing, and it was a difficult business to make money in when you were doing web design, like to be profitable. But we got there and we started doing it. And so, yeah, just a lot of graphic design, a lot of branding work, brand messaging, website design, and all that kind of stuff. After a while, that led more like full service marketing, because then once somebody has their brand and their website in place, then you got to promote it and market it. And so then we started getting into email marketing, social media marketing, Google ads, and all that kind of stuff.
So who was making the decision to start that new offering? Was it you or was it Chuck?
It just happened. It just happened kind of almost organically. And it really started with existing clients saying, hey, can you do this for us? And us saying, sure, yeah, we can do that. And then going back and figuring out, putting the pieces together to make it work.
So one of the tough things, in my experience as a business owner in the past, is having to recognize when A, you're overextended, or B, you're in a wrong market, right? Like the idea of the market is better than the actual market itself. So what was that process like for you, and how those conversations with Chuck go?
It was good. So in the beginning, we were in a market that was really tough to make money at, because web design, like, while like the budgets are pretty good, the expenses are a lot too. Like when you're doing custom development, you got to like start from the idea, the copywriting and all the pages, the content, the design, and then you got to pay a developer to like put it all together and code it and do all that. So we were getting really good at it, but we weren't making money. And then honestly, like by the time that we started like getting it pretty dialed in to where we were making pretty margins and all that, is the time that we were just like, or I personally, it was like, I'm so burned out. I don't ever want to like touch another website project again. I'm over it, you know? So it's like, it's kind of weird, because once we kind of got it all figured out was whenever it was like, we don't want to, and this was like kind of like after Chuck and I parted ways, and it was like, I just don't, it's too time consuming. It's too tedious. It's too much project management. And that's the thing too, is like the more services you offer, the more processes there are, the more difficult it is for one person to manage all of these different things, unless you want to pay them, 150 grand a year or whatever, which we weren't able to do. And so it just got to be too much.
So what was that conversation like with Chuck?
So Chuck and I, our run lasted about a solid 5 years, but there were some issues that we had, kind of some philosophical issues, and I don't know, there were just some things that we didn't see completely eye to eye on. And
like business philosophy?
Yeah, business philosophy, and just, I think some underlying things. And so we just kind of mutually decided, it's about time.
So, I think it'd be really valuable for a young entrepreneur, young founder, to hear how you approach those conversations, because people today, in my experience, a lot of people are scared to have confrontational conversations about disagreements and differences in philosophy.
I wish I could say it was totally smooth, but
that's the whole point of the podcast, is that it wasn't smooth.
It gets heated, but at the end of the day, when we decided, and we had the conversations, because we were like, look, we can't just keep like tugging against each other, when we're in front of clients and we're doing pitches and we're doing all that stuff, we were working pretty well together, but like, then when we were coming back, it's like, man, I really think we should be doing this over here. And he's like, I don't really feel comfortable. I don't want to do that. And so some of those types of, without getting into too many details, right, out of respect to Chuck and everything, but
of course,
it just got to a point to where we had the conversation, and most of the time it was, over some beers. And then when we got to the point to where we decided like, hey, like we're parting ways, I just feel lucky in the fact that we were able to just like hash everything out. Like, here's what this is going to look like. Here's what the buyout's going to look like. Here's what the percentage split's going to be. Here, we got like an evaluation on the company. And so by the time we went to the attorneys to like draw up all the buyout paperwork and all of that stuff. We just told them what we wanted to do. You know,
saved you a lot of money, I bet.
Saved a lot of money, but I just like, I feel blessed in that way because some of those things can get pretty ugly, and we were able to work through it pretty well and come up to a mutual
fast.
Yeah. And we were able to work, you know, mutual agreement. I say when we parted ways, you know, there for a while, like we kept our distance from each other for a while, but I have a ton of respect from Chuck. And then, you know, like looking back, you know, there's a lot of times where I wish I still had him around, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
So if someone is getting ready to have to address that sort of situation in their business, what advice, based on your experience, what advice would you have for them? Because it's just the facts are the facts, right? Those things are just going to turn hairy. That's just how they are, especially if it ends up that you guys had a 5-year run and it's essentially both of your babies, right? Both of yours, baby. That things can get real personal real fast.
Yeah, it can. And I think approaching it with respect and just putting it out there, you know, like saying like, I'm feeling this way. I'm not liking the way things are going. Be open and honest, you know? And on the flip side, like if somebody is coming to you with that conversation, I think it's important to like listen and understand what they're trying to say. It's really easy to get defensive and get pissed off and let emotion take hold. And I
feel attacked.
Yeah. And you know, like you got to respect it, you know? And so on the one side, if you're the one bringing up the conversation, you got to not be afraid to do it because it needs to be said. It needs to be out in the open. You got to clear the air. Do it in a respectful way and not in a condescending or attacking way. If you're on the receiving end of that, I would say just try to like, as you can well up with emotion. You know, sometimes that can manifest in anger, and say just do whatever you can to try to like stay calm, let the person talk, and really try to hear and understand what they're saying and why they're feeling that way. Because it might be one of those things where they want to part ways because this, and this, and this. And you're like, well, I didn't even know that was a problem. It's okay. I can like address that. I'm not that set in my ways, you know, like I'm willing to adjust. And if you have that conversation, you might not part ways, you know, you might say, well, why don't we just work on that? Or like, you know what? I've fucking been feeling the same way for a while too. You know? And so just like, if you hold things in, it's blocking your progress essentially.
To double down on your advice, there's a book, I forget the author. It's called Crucial Conversations. I would advise anyone who's in business to read that book. I know they do workshops. They do like a 1 or 2 day workshop where they kind of go over the principles of the book and act out conversations. Okay, so you survived a split with a business partner, and now you're stuck running the show yourself. You have all these product offerings, all these service offerings. So for you, what was the process of deciding what you excel at, what your business excels at? And then once you decided that, what was the rebranding process like for you?
The first thing that was the biggest struggle for me was getting good project management help. And I went through 2 or 3 people who like crushed it on their interview, and they seemed like the perfect fit. Their culture index dots aligned perfectly for what we were looking for, like all of that stuff. Their culture index is a personality test for those people that don't know, but kind of like it's almost like a strengths finder kind of.
What's your profile?
I am an architect profile.
Persuader.
Really?
Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's what my wife is, a persuader.
It's the best profile. I'm not biased at all.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm like definitely much more of like a get shit done execution type person. You know, I have a really high drive. And I myself am a good project manager, but I just had trouble hiring for that position.
So why do you think that is?
We had a lot of services that we were offering and some pretty demanding clients and some pretty high profile clients. And when you're managing logo design, web designs, print ads, digital media, like all of these things, like literally could like have their own manager. But I needed somebody who could oversee the whole thing and who had experience and who could operate those things at a high level. And be professional in client communications and on the ball and on top of shit.
It's a huge ask.
It's a huge ask. And I just was struggling with that. And that was one of the reasons too, is like the decision was made to really pare down our service offerings. I'm like, okay, if we offer video and content creation and we offer social media advertising services, like that's two things. I'm like, I feel like we can manage two things. It would be a lot easier to find help. It'd be a lot easier for everybody and for us to just kind of narrow our focus, you know?
So when you're looking at these, did you look at what were your profit centers versus what was a waste of time? How did you make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of it. The more until you get to a certain level, you know, where you're managing really major, huge accounts, it's hard to maintain profitability whenever you're stretched so thin. Because it's what we do is human capital intensive. So like we've got to pay people to execute all of this stuff. We got to pay graphic designers. We got to pay web developers. We got to pay digital media buyers. We got to pay social media managers. We got to like all of these services, like we had to pay people to do. And the one person that can do all of that stuff really well is extremely rare and hard to find. And so, yeah, it's like one thing might be profitable one month. Like we might make good margins like on web designs, but then like this other part slows down a little bit. So it's like, it was just really hard for us to maintain that like good, healthy profit margin when we were kind of spread so thin.
I have some questions.
Okay.
All right. So a lot of entrepreneurs and founders that you talk to who go into business with a partner after they founded their business and are already somewhat successful, what I found is whenever they offer equity up, it's because they can't afford to pay a salary. Is that kind of the situation with Chuck?
Yeah, for sure. Because you want somebody that's going to run right with you, but also operate at a high level. And someone who is making $120,000 a year, why are they going to leave that? Like I can't pay that person $120,000 a year when I'm doing like $250,000 in revenue. Like that doesn't you just can't do it.
Yeah.
But to get from there up to the next level, you need somebody to run with that can operate at that high level. And offering equity and bringing in a partner is like really sometimes the only way to do that. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't have ever afforded to pay Chuck and just like hire him straight out. And so, you know, he wanted to be a part of building something and it worked out, you know?
Yeah.
While in the end, like we parted ways, I would say overall it worked out.
Okay. If you had to do it all over again, would you finance that position via loan, or would you give up that equity and go on the ride again?
Well, right now, where we are right now, I would probably finance it or figure out a way to bring on a business development person with a fair, commission-based compensation.
Mm.
But again, like anybody that's worth a shit, like needs a pretty decent base salary, like,
yeah.
So like in our industry, really, like for somebody who's operating at a high level, who's going to bring in the type of accounts that's going to really like scale a company, they need at least like a 50 grand base salary plus a nice like compensation package, like commission structure. And so, yeah, I mean, we've actually been in some talks with some people about doing just that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just wanted to get some of our operational stuff dialed in and some of our process and procedures dialed in before, we make that leap. But I imagine next year we'll probably really start seriously like looking for that.
I thank you for being so frank with that answer, because I always see it when you're talking to someone who founded, and they're very quick to give up equity because they need that position filled in order to scale. But there's so many small business loan programs out there. It's very easy to go down that route too, especially if your numbers are right.
It is. It's also really damn tricky, dude. Like I lost my ass on hiring a salesperson like right in the COVID times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, he came in guns blazing, I'm badass, I know what the hell I'm doing. And, 35 grand and base salary later, he didn't bring in a single deal.
Oh, wow.
So like, there's risk in everything, And so just because you get a loan and you can pay somebody doesn't mean they're going to bring in money. Like with Chuck, like my risk was low. Yes, I was giving up equity, but I knew the guy. Like I knew him well. We worked like a year and a half together before we did that. So like, just trying to hire somebody off the street, and giving them money to go sell for you, like, I don't know, man. I think it's a tricky situation. You just got to be careful.
You see that a lot in insurance too. Like people will negotiate these huge salaries, and a year and a half, 2-3 years later, they haven't brought in anything, and they're looking to jump to the next shop that'll hire them. And people will go 10-12 years in a career that way, just because they're really good at selling themselves, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to get distracted, but I wanted to touch on that point with Chuck and how you guys got into business together. All right. So we're eliminating products and services, and we're how did you come up with Fuel and Spark Media? What was the concept? What was your vision for that moving forward?
I knew I didn't want to be full service anymore. Like I just knew I didn't want to do that. In fact, my wife and I were, kind of on a trip, and we were doing this vision board stuff, and
I love vision boards.
Yeah, it was pretty cool exercise, but I was like, I either want to like get out totally, or like if I'm gonna stay in this, I don't want to do all this other shit. And video production and content creation is something I've always liked to do. It's fun. I enjoy it. And at the end of the day, you got something cool to watch, and you could show people on your phone. It's cool.
I did this. Yeah. My company did this.
Yeah. This is the kind of shit we do, And then the social media advertising was getting really good results for our clients, and it was pretty profitable. Both of those were actually profitable parts of our business. And it just so happened that it was the most fun part and the part that like gave our clients the best results. So I started doing research, and I'm like, can we actually have a company that only focuses on these things? Like, is that a viable option? And so I just started talking to people in the industry, talking to clients, existing clients, talking to anybody and everybody who like would know a little bit of something about this. And I actually ended up talking to someone who was running a business out of Nashville that just was doing exactly what we wanted to do. And I got hooked up with him and had a phone call with him, and he was like, look, man, like, we're fucking crushing it here. And this is what we do. Like, we don't do email marketing. We don't do this. We don't do that. We don't do this. We don't even touch that. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so awesome. And so that kind of gave me the confidence to pursue it and move forward with it.
That's awesome. I know there's in B school they gave an example of someone walking down a frozen food aisle, and they see, oh, there's 40 versions of frozen pizza. So they'll go look at the frozen pizza market, and they're like, hey, the frozen pizza market is $5 billion a year. So if I can just create a frozen pizza brand and capture 0.001% of that, I'm going to make all this money. More in reality, you do a little bit of research, you see the market's saturated. So I love that you actually did a bunch of research before deciding. That's a lot of entrepreneurs and founders really need to do a lot of that.
Yeah, we did. I did a bunch of research, and I even paid for some like coaching and consulting and stuff like that, because I wanted to make sure like I'm making the right call, you know, and doing this right. And we had a bunch of shit lined up too. Like going into March of 2020, you know, we had shoots booked for a client at Texas Motor Speedway for the NASCAR races, and we were going to go spend 4 days shooting content for a record label down at South by Southwest, and we had other stuff lined up for other clients. And so we like had everything lined up to ramp up and move into this thing and be aggressive and
next
like,
level.
Yeah. And like really like launch, you know. And then the pandemic happened, and that, you know, like it was just, I mean, it was like slamming into a brick wall pretty much, you know, like, and so I think the fighting through, you know, like those 2 years or so of COVID, was really, it was challenging, but you know, we persisted and moved through it, learned a lot. And then right after that, going into the 10K small business program, you know, like that kind of gave us, or gave me even more of a skill set to like take this thing to the next level.
Well, like, what kind of stuff did you learn, during COVID, trying to survive that? Which obviously you did, you're thriving now, and then the 10K small business program after that.
So going through COVID, I could have gone one of two ways, and I probably went the wrong way, right? I could have just stopped and been like, okay, let's see what the fuck's going on here. I'm not going to bring on anybody. I'm going to cut all employees. I'm not going to pay anybody. I'm just going to like,
a lot of companies did that.
Yeah. I'm going to stop and let this thing play out and see how it goes. I didn't do that. Because so many people were moving to, like, video was actually getting to be more and more important for companies to market themselves. But so I brought in, like, that's when I lost my ass on the salesperson. And I brought in people to, like, you know, help like power through it, you know. Had the PPP money, so we were okay. But I was just like, I kind of had the mindset of screw it, like, we're going to fucking do this no matter what. And so we just, like, you know, kind of like running uphill, dragging an anchor behind us, you know, just like plowing forward, doing anything and everything that we could to create content for ourselves, you know, create content, because we had the plan, like we had the things in place to like build up our portfolio, like as we were launching. But we didn't have an extensive video production portfolio. And so all of the things that we had lined up for March, April, and May that we had already sold was also going to be building up our momentum in our portfolio to like help us launch. And we just didn't have that. And we didn't really have an ability to create a portfolio during 2020, you know?
Right.
And so at that point, like, I probably should have called time out, but we didn't. We just kept plowing forward. so that leads me into like the 10K small business, where it's like we just kept grinding and grinding and grinding. I'm glad we did in some ways, because we were able to learn a lot about our craft.
Is that a paid program?
No, it's very selective though. They have two cohorts a year in Dallas, and out of like a couple hundred applications, they select like 30 people.
Oh, wow.
So you got to go for in-person interviews. You got to be able to dedicate a shitload of time to it. Like it's not for the faint of heart. Like it's an intense program.
Sounds awesome.
It's incredible. Like I wish that kind of content could be available to anybody who's trying to start or run a business. And it's great too, because you have I think you have to be in business for 2 years, but you have people that are doing anywhere from like $150,000 in revenue all the way up to like $5 to $10 million in revenue going through the program. And
That's
so
great.
like, not only do you learn a lot from their curriculum and their coaches and their business advisors, but you learn a lot from the other people that are in the class with you, and develop strong bonds with those people. But it just makes you a all around better business owner. And so after, just like plowing through the last few years, after going through the 10K small business, and we weren't very profitable during those few years, we were kind of burning through money. And so after I went through that program, like we kind of like decided to let some people go and focus on delivering exceptional work for the clients that we had and that we have. And also, the business that's coming on organically, just focus like on quality. And we needed to streamline some of our own processes and things like that. And we're currently in the process of like rebranding and redesigning our website and all of that kind of stuff. And I don't want to say rebranding, because we're not changing our name or our logo, but just refreshing our image and our messaging and all that kind of stuff.
Your videos are amazing. Now, how did you go about creating that type of vibe? How intentional are you around that?
Well, everything is intentional. And I would say that stylistically, I think we had some similar types of clients that kind of were looking for a similar vibe. But, we have some things that we've been behind on posting on our website that have a little more of a softer or a more feminine type of feel and things like that. So in all of my years of doing creative work, I actually try not to have like a distinctive style, because the style needs to reflect the brand of our client. So if we have a sports client or a whiskey client, or these really kind of like cool, like more masculine kind of things, or might have a similar type of feel. But if you have like an interior design shop, or something that's more, we're doing some work right now for this product that's geared toward like 8 to 12-year-old girls. Those videos are gonna have a very, very
I should hope
different feel than what's on like the things that are on our website now. And so we just kind of like really try to make sure that the creative matches the brand and what our clients are trying to portray.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So I have a question, and the whole point of this podcast is for people to learn from your journey, and it's a 2-part question. Me being in sales, also, I take it personal when someone gets burnt on a salesperson. So if someone is going about hiring a salesperson, what advice would you give them? And then also, what if someone is going to start a business or is in the middle of starting a business or a young entrepreneur? what do you think your main piece of advice would be to them along their journey based on your experience?
All right. The first question on hiring a salesperson, in my experience, is don't overextend yourself. Make them prove that they can sell. You know, like I won't bring on a salesperson that doesn't have strong connections, like in our industry, like in advertising and marketing industry. So if they have relationships with advertising agencies and marketing directors and brands and things like that. So that's why I go to industry events. I go to American Marketing Association events. I'm on the board of the American Advertising local chapter, and go to PRSA events and Public Relations Society events. And so whenever I decide to bring in somebody in that role, I'm going to make sure they're well connected in the industry, and I'm going to make sure that they can actually bring in business. And then I'm also like going to go with my gut, because I think a lot of times I've gone with what I feel. When I lost my ass on the dude I hired, the salesperson I did hire, I knew in my gut within the first 2 weeks that this is probably a bad deal.
Mm.
And I gave him the opportunity to prove me wrong, and I got fucked. Can I say that?
You say whatever you want.
And so I should have just gone with my gut and being like, dude, this is not
thanks,
working.
No thanks.
This is not going to work, man. I'm sorry. I think you're a great human, and the telltale sign was, I'm so stupid. Lessons learned, right?
Lessons learned, yeah.
Listen to this podcast and don't make these mistakes, right? But I sent him to a networking thing, and it was one of the very first in-person networking things post-COVID. Everybody was just so like ready, to like get together and do business with each other and all that. And he went to this thing, and afterwards I was like, how many leads did you get, man? He's like, oh, I didn't get any leads. I'm like, how'd you not get any leads? I mean, you were in the same room with like 100 entrepreneurs for like 2 days. Like, you didn't get any leads. He's like, well, I wasn't trying to, like, I was just trying to make relationships and things like that.
Yeah, those are called leads.
And I'm like, did you ask anybody if they need our services? Are they interested? Are they using anybody? Like, I was like, oh. And after that, I should have cut it off, like, right then and there, because any salesperson that's worth a salt would have came back and with at least 2 or 3 people, like, oh, I'm going to reach out to them. I think we got a chance with them. I think we're going to like, it might not be anything big, but like we can get something, and it can lead to something else. And when he came back and with nothing, with a zero goose egg, I should just go with your gut, man. Like, dude, because it'll save you a lot of money and a lot of frustration.
When people show you who they are, you got to believe them. Yeah,
and the dude was a good dude. I was buddies with him. He's like a good guy, but he just wasn't. He wasn't a hustler. He wasn't a sales guy.
Yeah. Okay, so for the next part of the question,
can you repeat it?
What, are you busy or something? Yeah. So what's your number one takeaway that someone could learn from your story and your experience on their own journey?
Reach out and find resources. Like, if you're in the very beginning stages of starting a business, find a mentor, but also like find your business resources in your local community, right? Like most cities of any kind of size, and even small towns, they have like a business assistance center or some sort of entrepreneurial center or something. Like, go there, meet those people, figure out what the resources are that are around you to help you get started. Because like I said, when I started the business, I didn't go and get an MBA, and I didn't go to any kind of business school at all. I just was like, I'm good at this and I can do it, you know, and I wish that I would have known about the resources that existed at the time. And I would just implore anyone to, like, don't be afraid to reach out, ask people for help. And it's funny. I was at an event with a great speaker, actually, but he did this really interesting thing. He asked the whole crowd. He said, "Everybody, raise your hand if you like to help people." Everybody in the crowd raised their hand, like 100 people, right? And then he's like, "Raise your hand if you like asking people for help." And like 5 hands showed up. It's like, why is there this disconnect of, like, if everybody likes to help each other, like, why isn't everybody raising their hand? Where, like, why do we feel like it's not okay to ask for help?
It's ego, and people are embarrassed to admit that they need help.
Yeah. Or right? They don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to get into some sort of an accelerator program or anything like that, because it'll speed up your process and it'll help you tremendously.
Awesome. Good stuff, man.
Cool.
Well, I appreciate you coming by. This has been Business Blind Spots. And if for any information on Chris, we will have all of his contacts in our show notes. You can look up his LinkedIn. We'll drop his website and all that good stuff. And if you need any business marketing and video help and resources, he is the man. I'm also excited to see your new brand roll out, and I'm sure it's going to be awesome stuff. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.